Greetings everyone. Yes, I'm still in a lockdown. All things are well, but restricted in movement. So I'm sitting here in the driveway where we are staying in Sydney. So given the fact that I can't upload a video from our travels, I thought I'd give you some tips instead around travels. So the first tip I'm going to talk about today is distances. Yes, Australia is a big place, and that's something we learned the hard way when we migrated here over 30 years ago. Australia is the seventh largest continent, and probably the only one that is a whole country by itself. But when it comes to traveling via road, there are phenomenal distances between places. For example, back in 2012, my wife and I took a trip into the Kimberley region. And we live in Sydney, so we decided to commence our trip from Alice Springs. Of course, we had to get from Sydney to Alice Springs. Now, the distance in kilometres is 2,700 kilometres or 2,700 kilometres, which is quite a distance. We took about 5 days to get there with stops overnights. So, as you can see, it's not always easy to travel within Australia. Depending on where you want to go, you have to factor in getting to the place you want to explore. For instance, from most of the eastern states, i.e. Brisbane, Sydney and Victoria, and even Perth, it's still over 2,000 kilometres to Alice Springs. The shortest distance would be from the Northern Territory, i.e. Darwin, and also Adelaide. Now, you might think that you can drive 800 kilometers a day or something like that, but I'll give you some tips around that. It's not a smart thing to do. First of all, you only have around 10 to 14 hours in daylight depending on the season, i.e. 10 hours in the winter and 14 hours in summer. Now, driving long distances on these highways can be very tiring. Of course, you can be two of you driving and taking turns, that's fine. The other limiting factor is you just don't want to be driving in the dark in Australia. Come dawn or dusk, you're at the risk of hitting some of the wildlife on the roads. Now, you may have noticed in some of the videos I've uploaded that there's a lot of roadkill, mostly kangaroos, but also other animals. As soon as the sun is setting, trust me, they will be jumping in front of your car if you're driving at night. So you can have a big accident or have a bad conscience by killing some of the wildlife. So I would restrict the driving to daylight hours, and I would rather take shorter trips than longer trips and cut it down. So if you're planning a trip in Australia and decide to commence from a particular point, whether it's going to the Kimberleys or the Cairns region or Darwin or Sydney for that matter, depending on your origins, you have to carefully plan your trip. There's nothing wrong with spending a fair while driving for a few days until you get to your location, but you have to factor that in. The other issue you have with Australia is fuel prices. They tend to be cheapest in the capital cities, but once you get out of the capital cities, the prices tend to go up a fair bit sometimes, like in the outback. They can be almost double what it is in the cities. Another thing to keep in mind is the fact that there are other road users on the roads as well. So if you're driving outback roads, there are these road trains and you're supposed to give way to them. So you have to keep an eye out for that. I've lost count also of how many times we've run into cattle being herded on the road or sheep. So those are some of the things that will slow you down depending on where you are. But hopefully it's useful for you. But remember, lots of distances, plan carefully what you're going to drive each day, and then take it from there. Getting a micro sleep during driving and heading into the opposite lane is nothing short of a suicide. So stay safe.